Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week, I wanted to start with an idea that I literally just saw. There was an advertisement that I saw. There's like, "We'll help you release every game you start," and my immediate reaction was, "That's a terrible idea," because sometimes your ideas just aren't good enough, and that's okay. It's completely valid to have an idea and be like, "Wait, this probably isn't how it's gonna go." Like there's a lot of games that I started that I was just like, man, this was a bad idea, and I just kind of let it languish. I mean, with extreme mining, that's a game that I probably should have let languish because it's just like it was an idea and it wasn't well formed enough for me to turn it into something more cohesive. But I was stubborn. I was very stubborn, and I wanted to get something released. So I pounded away at it until it was released. And that's not a good way to approach projects. To be like, I have to finish everything I start. I mean, hell, there's albums that I comped out and I wrote like 3 or 4 songs for that I started like 12 years ago, and they just kind of sat there. And maybe someday I'll get back to it, but it's not something that I'm focusing on, that I'm trying to finish actively. With the album Elemental, I did take a long break from that. Like I started that, I think, in like 2008 or 2006 or something, and then 10 years later I went back to it and I had the inspiration to actually finish it. It was a really weird process because I started those songs in a different software. Excuse me, but I think that it was important for me to take that break. And it's okay that if I hadn't finished it. Like I think that having that mindset where everything I start has to be done, has to be completed and shipped, is really toxic and very dangerous. But I think that it's okay to let things sit for a while. It's entirely excuse me, it's entirely possible that I will go back to some of these other projects that I started, and I'll make great strides on them and I'll finish them. And that's totally cool. But I'm not trying to focus on releasing everything I do. Plus, sometimes you just want to sit down and you want to make something just to learn how to make something. And I think that that's completely valid too, because it's possible that you just want to sit down and you want to learn how to do a specific thing in game development. And that doesn't mean you want to make and release a whole game for it. Just because, if it's just like one mechanic, is it really worth setting up an itch page and creating like trailers and all this other stuff? And granted, that's kind of the more quote unquote professional way to approach it. You can always just dump something out there and just be like, hey, I mean, it's the same thing as posting something on SoundCloud. It's like, hey, I did it. You check it out. Like it if you want, or don't listen if you don't, and it's fine. But yeah, I don't know. Like I just saw that and I just really wanted to talk about it because it's a really toxic way to approach how to like make things where you have to just release everything. And I have talked about how good it is to release things. And it's still definitely good to focus on trying to get things out into the world. Because, and I'm talking on the other side of this now, to a proponent of releasing everything that you make. I think that it's important to get comfortable releasing things because that whole process is an experience. It's a skill that you have to learn. And it's important to kind of understand how you create an itch page and how you create like a trailer and all this other stuff. Or like releasing an album. It's not as easy. These days it is as easy as just uploading files to Bandcamp and hitting done. But there's a process to it, and it's important to understand that process. But I really just wanted to talk about kind of the negatives for that, because it's just it's so tempting to just release everything you make. But sometimes it's just not worth it. And that's okay. Like either if it's an experiment or you get halfway through something and you're just not feeling it anymore. Like if you don't have the passion for making something, then just stop. Just stop for a while. You can always go back to it. You can always flesh excuse me, flesh it out more if you want. And I think that it's just important to just keep that in mind, and not try to hammer yourself into a particular form simply because that's how you feel like you have to do things. I have been known to over-release things in the past, and while that hasn't really been to my detriment, I also feel that there are some things that I've released where I'm just like, yeah, that probably didn't have to be put out into the world. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I really genuinely do appreciate it. And thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Be remarkable.